Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bell to Bell. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, joined today by Zach Smith, and we have a fantastic show for you guys today. It's coming out a little bit later, a day later, but that's because I couldn't sit here and talk about what happened in Toronto, Ontario by myself. I had to get my good buddy Zach Smith on the call, so we are going to talk about, of course, what John Cena did on Saturday at Elimination Chamber. And after that, we will dive into what could be an absolutely stacked women's showcase at Wrestlemania 41. And shit, if we have time, we'll throw out our favorite feuds currently building in WWE. But before we get started, I always like to remind people, if you like this video, like, share, and subscribe to us at Nick Belsky on YouTube, or you can find us on Spotify at Bell to Bell. Zach, first and foremost, thank you for joining me today. And secondly, I am so excited to talk to you because I know you're as pumped as I am about what we saw at Elimination Chamber this past Saturday.
Absolutely, my man. I appreciate you having me on first and foremost. I don't know that there's a better name that you could possibly have for a wrestling podcast than Bell to Bell. So it's very nice that it's fitting for your name as well. So perfect across the board there. But yeah, listen, I'm so used to just being in the podcasting space, talking about Pittsburgh sports, like literally putting out 8 podcasts a week about them. I'm so excited to be able to step away from that for a second and focus on this passion, because you actually mentioned this right before. Cyclical. There's seasons for those. WWE, AEW, wrestling in general, year round. We can talk about it whenever. And I know there's hot seasons and not seasons. I've actually never heard that before you said that to me, but I love that. We are certainly in that now. And there was a lot of complaints about the build to WrestleMania. And then within like 48 hours, the way that things shifted from Saturday to Monday night. Woo! So yeah, the John Cena heel turn, which is what we're here to talk about. I'll be honest, I actually made a YouTube video doing Elimination Chamber predictions that I put out Saturday morning. And I threw out the possible idea of Cena turn happening. I made the case for who was going to be the corporate champion for The Rock. And I went through like who in the Elimination Chamber, if it could have been Cody, but I went through the people in the chamber that it would make sense if it wasn't going to be Cody. I got to Cena and I kind of laid out what would happen basically and why it would make sense. So I'll be like, it still shocked me, but it was in my mind that it could happen. And I think that the possibility of it being Cena versus Cody, I'm curious as to what your thought was, like if this was the route that they should have gone. Obviously, we know now that they did. My thought was honestly that I wouldn't have pulled the trigger yet. And I think that it was so well executed, and I have no problem with it. But like I don't want to operate in hindsight. My idea going into the event was Rock is special guest referee for WrestleMania 41. And at that time, we did a heel turn from whoever was going to be his corporate champion.
Mm-hmm. See, that would have been, the moment would have been bigger at WrestleMania than it was at Elimination Chamber. But at the same time, I don't think the build would be as exciting. Like if we saw Cena versus Cody, everybody would have sat there and said, hey, that's cool. That's awesome. It's babyface Cena on his last run against the new babyface and Cody. And they could have built a fairly decent story between now and April 19th and 20th. But with Cena turning now, to be able to build it with Cena and The Rock to WrestleMania, it builds up WrestleMania.
Travis Scott.
And Travis Scott, which he was there. I guess he was there. I mean, he actually played a huge part because he beat the crap out of Cody Rhodes. He smacked him and blasted his eardrum and everything else that happened. But I think that in hindsight, of course, it's hard to operate in hindsight. I would have enjoyed what you're saying, and the moment would have been bigger, but the build wouldn't have been as big. And as we've seen with Triple H last year and now this year, he's really honing in on that stretch between Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania. He wants to make massive stories throughout the entirety of that, not just massive moments at that event. And I think that's why it made a lot of sense for him to do that this weekend. And I get it. Like there's a chance that this surpasses, and we can talk about this in a little bit, surpasses the build to WrestleMania 40, but I don't think it nearly would have been as big if you would have had face Cena and face Cody going throughout that European tour.
I do wonder too if part of it was like last year's Elimination Chamber, widely considered one of their worst PLEs, like in this run that we've had under Triple H. And I wonder if maybe there was some something they learned, like a lesson learned there in terms of like, this can't be the quality of show for the PLE right before WrestleMania. We have to have something on it that is going to be a little bit of a twist. Not only do we get that, obviously, not that we're going to dive into it too much, but like you get the Jade Cargill return, you get the Randy Orton return, and then you also get this. So it was like, a PLE, which is normally just like a filler one on the road to WrestleMania, actually massive because of this moment and a couple other thrown in there. So absolutely hear what you're saying. I didn't want to operate in hindsight. I was trying to lay out what my path was prior to. At the same time, if they would have gone that route, I do wonder, even despite the moment that we saw in the chamber with Rollins and Punk, if you would have had a lot of people still clamoring for Punk to use his favor to make this a triple threat match, if it was face Cody and face Cena. But now with Cena turning, I don't think you're going to have anybody saying like Punk should be added to this match. I think we want the one-on-one between Cena and Cody.
Yeah, I agree, especially because Punk on Monday Night Raw went out and said, you know what? People think that my road is closed to WrestleMania. And I think everybody was sitting there saying, listen, with Cena being heel, I think we all want it to be closed. Like, save that favor, use it a little bit later.
That summer feud between them, like with Punk going after a heel Cena and like a corporate. And I'm curious to see, I think this is going to be expanded upon, like Cena, Rock, Travis Scott. I think this has become like a faction. So I'm curious to see who else gets brought into that. But I think like over the summer, that could be like a summer feud. Last year, Punk had the feud of the summer with Drew McIntyre. I think we could see something similar this year with Cena.
Now, going back to the heel turn itself, there's been a lot of not speculation. There's been a lot of discourse about, is this the greatest heel turn of all time? Obviously, people will talk about most recently whenever Roman Reigns was sitting on the couch and they panned out and boom, it's the wise man. It's Paul Heyman. That's a big one. Obviously, Hogan 96 NWO is the one that we're going to be talking about the most, but you also have Shawn Michaels back in the day and the barbershop. But my question is simply like, do you view this as 1A, 1B with Hogan, or do you even put this ahead of Hulk Hogan turning heel in 1996?
I think it's more shocking to me because of like, I never had my mind, there was a thought that Hogan could never turn heel. I had put that idea to bed in terms of John Cena, especially on his last run. So like, while I said I made a YouTube video making the case for it, I didn't think it was going to happen. Like, It was just, if this does happen, this is why it would, because this is what he's willing to do to win that 17th. And he also started to show some heelish tendencies by just inserting himself into the Elimination Chamber and not having to qualify. But neither here nor there. I'll say, like, I like to kind of categorize them a bit differently. I think Cena's most surprising, Hogan's most iconic, Roman's was the most necessary for his character. Without that, Roman would have been around. Like, he would have had a job. It's not like he would have been, cut from the company or anything like that. But just in terms of what it did for his status, like as an all-time great, that was necessary for him as a character. And honestly, for the business, when you look at the shape that it was in, like, he inserted himself into, like, Bray Wyatt, rest in peace, Fiend, and Braun Strowman. Like, that's who we were talking about battling for the championship before Roman came back. Very necessary for him to do so. So yeah, I think it's right there with Hogan. I would say a little bit more surprising, not as iconic.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the other thing that you look back at is when Hogan turned, people had kind of thought that he grew a little stale. Now I understand there's people that have the same feeling about John Cena being a babyface, but at the same time, we haven't seen him. And he was here for this retirement tour where, again, he was shaking hands and kissing babies. Like, that was going to be the thing, and every building was going to be ecstatic to see John Cena. And the WWE said, well, you got that in Los Angeles at the Raw and Netflix debut. You got that in Indy at the Royal Rumble. You got that before the event in Toronto. And now you're going to get something that you haven't seen and people didn't expect to see in 20 years. Like, after 20 years of being a babyface, nobody expected on this run, genuinely, that they were going to turn him heel and say, we're finally going to do the thing, and do it in such a way that he immediately goes up against Cody Rhodes, who is today's biggest babyface. I think the way they did that and the fact that they used The Rock to do that, I think it was just all the pieces had to be in place, and they were, and it was perfect.
Do you have any concern about, like, what's crowd reaction going to be? Obviously, it's like, is he not going to get that heel heat? Because it is a lot of people just paying tribute to the career that he's had and just getting to see it. Everybody that sees him from this point on, there's probably some stops where they're making multiple along the way here throughout this year. But most of the place he's going to go to, it's that person's last time seeing John Cena in person. Are they really going to boo him? Like, that's what I'm curious about, is the type of reaction he's going to get from the live crowds.
especially in Europe where he hasn't been seen in that capacity in such a long
Mhm.
time. That is a concern a little bit to me, but at the same time, I feel like John Cena's been waiting for this moment. So I feel like he's going to be able to say, you know what, they are probably going to, at the very beginning of any of my promos, any of my appearances, they are probably going to be behind me a little bit. But I think John Cena is just going to go to that next level. I feel like heel Cena is something that we haven't seen for a reason. Like, he was saving this for something. They've held him back a little bit. He said, I think it was in 2016 or something like that, that he had the music, he had the new look, he had the new
Chris Van Vliet
attitude
podcast. Yeah.
already. And they decided to just turn it off. Now, with the foresight and time to think of this, and going up against Cody, which I think is the biggest part here. If he turned heel to go against Randy, to go against Punk, it would have been a cool moment. But to go against Cody, who is unquestionably the biggest babyface that we have seen in professional wrestling since the heyday of Big Match John, I think that because of that, he's going to be able to kind of hone in on this character and be able to get some boos. Is he going to get overwhelming Logan Paul, Dominic Mysterio boos? No, it's not possible that John Cena is going to get that. But I do think that he's going to be able to work it in a way that he gets some heat from even the international crowds. Now, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I want to ask. Last year's build to WrestleMania 40 was tremendous. It was the best that I have seen in my lifetime. Is there any way that this build between Cody and heel Cena can be better than the one for the WrestleMania 40 main events? Because you got 2 matches out of last year's build. Do you think this one could rival that?
I don't want to close the door on it happening. I would say, to me, it's extremely unlikely that it will. I think, it was just so special. Like, they captured lightning in a bottle because it wasn't supposed to happen. Like, the way that it played out just was not their plans for the way that it was going to go down. And I thought it was perfect because of that being the case. And so I don't want to completely close the door and say it won't happen and, like, recency bias or whatever play into it. But I feel like last year's build was just so special. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see that again. And they just have a way of, man, like every 10 years, like 30 with Daniel Bryan capturing lightning in a bottle there. Like, it just seems like every 10 years, WrestleMania, they do it in a way like that. And WrestleMania 40 to me was perfect. Super blessed to be there live in attendance for that. I think this is going to be awesome. I don't think it's going to be as good as 40 was.
I think a big part of that too is time, right? That WrestleMania 40 build started in February. It started right after the Rumble with the kickoff show and the slap heard around the world when The Rock slapped the taste out of Cody Rhodes' mouth. So that, I think, plays into this. You have a truncated ability to build this, especially considering John Cena's not going to be around all the time. The Rock's not going to be around on every taping, every episode of Friday Night SmackDown. And now, who knows the availability of Cody Rhodes? Like, these guys aren't going to get into a ring before April 20th. Like, it's not going to happen. So, I mean, in a match, I should say. But I do think that they're up against it. But again, you're looking at heel Cena and heel Rock. That is hard to deny because last year we got heel Rock and that's what kind of elevated it. This year, you have a heel John Cena. And on that show, you're not going to have the build of whatever Roman Reigns is doing because he's going to have to go to Monday Night Raw to take on Rollins or take on Punk if it is indeed a triple threat match. So I think you have time if utilized properly to make it close. I don't think I'm the same camp as you, though. I think that at the end of the day, what they did for WrestleMania 40 was special. With the fact that they got 2 main event matches out of technically, I guess, 3 feuds, because you have The Rock and whoever, but you also have Seth Rollins and Drew, and that helped build that match too. I think it's hard to say that this build is going to be able to branch out into 3 separate matches on WrestleMania weekend.
And even like Seth and Cody, who were teammates for that, though, like they had their feud, obviously, when Cody first came into the company and publicly had said that they weren't friends. Like, obviously, they formed through that. They became much closer through that. But like even their hatred towards each other and Rollins just saying, for the greater good, I'm willing to do this for you, basically sacrificing himself, being the MVP, in my opinion, last year of WrestleMania with the work that he was doing, especially through the injuries that he had. I think it all tied in. And I think that's another thing, like you just mentioned there, about like how much emphasis there was just within that, those 2 main events and how they were all going to kind of connect the dots there to tie that put a bow on that. This year, it just seems like, while I do think this is going to get a ton of attention and be the majority of where the focus goes, it's not all connected to this. Like, they're telling so many different stories, and we can dive into the ones in the women's division. Whereas, like, I'm not saying they weren't telling stories last year, but pretty much everything tied back to that. This year, it seems like they're going a lot more different directions.
Now, the last thing I want to talk about with the heel turn, we could talk for hours about John Cena turning heel. It is a worthy moment for you to sit down and just literally spew and spill your guts for however long. But I want to kind of move away from Cena versus Cody in this aspect. I want to look a little bit further down the road. Now, this is John Cena's retirement tour, after all. This is the last year of John Cena. But with him turning heel this early in the year, there's no way in my eyes that he goes out a heel. At some point, it's going to click back into neutral. It's going to click back into what it's been his entire career, which is babyface John. Is there any possibility in your eyes, with the rumors of a potential John Cena farewell PLE in Boston, Massachusetts at the TD Garden, that we get the rubber match, that John Cena, after doing whatever he's going to do as a heel in the early portion of this year, maybe into the summer, turns face, and The Rock says, you're going to pay for that. And it's Cena versus Rock 3, the rubber match, as John Cena's final match in WWE.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be awesome. Honestly, I haven't really let my mind get to that. Just because, like, if I think about The Rock and thinking of matches, like botches for him to check, I've been thinking about obviously Cody Rhodes, and I've been thinking about Roman Reigns as those stories that he has to tell. John Cena has not been on my mind in terms of a Rock match for him coming back to do. But I mean, it would certainly make sense if you're going through, like, he's got to get a Randy Orton match in somewhere, I would think. This spring, summer, or fall before he hangs him up. CM Punk, I just mentioned that too. But one with The Rock where it's like a full, like the end of the story that they're telling right now. Like, we're at the beginning of it. If the end of the story is him going back to being a face and taking out The Rock, and again, it's going to depend to me on how they build out this faction. Like, who else is going to be brought in to be a part of it. And telling that story. But I love it. I love the idea of this coming full circle by the end of it and Cena being back to being a face. Because I feel like, even though I'm totally cool with him turning right now, and it was awesome to see this, and I'm curious to see how this version plays out, at the end of the day, we all know him as being that baby face. I feel like that's the last impression that we should see.
Yeah, and it's crazy because coming into this farewell tour, your mind could take you on so many different directions of what is going to happen with John Cena. The fact that he turned heel opens up so many more possibilities. And I think I hadn't thought about Cena versus Rock simply because, well, we saw it. Mm-hmm. We saw it twice, and we saw it at WrestleMania. But for Cena's last match, there are some that say, well, he needs to utilize that opportunity to put over young talent, give them the ultimate bump. It's John Cena, and it's his last match. He cannot go down on his back. And in my eyes, being a heel is just as bad as going down on your back for an all-time great in John Cena. I just don't see a way that they're going to say, you know what, after all this time, he's going to be a bad guy as he walks off into the sunset after being the most unanimous good guy outside of maybe Hulk Hogan in the history of the industry. So I'd seen a Rock. Some people don't want to see it. I think that being the bookend of his career is something that, to me, I can't think of a better matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as they, obviously, we don't know what their schedules are going to be like by that point. They're going to do a lot more dates, obviously, in the road to WrestleMania. What's the back end of the year look like from a date perspective for those two guys? I think that's going to be the big question for me. What I will say is, I just thought of this now. Hopefully, with him turning heel, that just eliminates the fact that we see a Logan Paul match for John Cena along this time of tour.
100%. I couldn't agree more, because when that was rumored for WrestleMania, I said, you know, I hadn't been penciling in John Cena with Cody. I thought, okay, that's a good match, but at the same time, I was like, I mean, Punk Cody makes a lot of sense, but then whenever I looked at it, and people were like, well, yeah, how about Logan Paul versus John Cena? I was like, in his last Mania, that's the worst case scenario. So I'm glad that we've gotten to this point where it went from that to now the best thing you could imagine in the first real matchup of the American Nightmare versus, I mean, we got to come up with a nickname for him, but heel Cena is the only thing I can think of right now.
Yeah, this feels like the first threat to the championship. Because it seems like so far Cody's run has just been like filler. And I feel like it was because we were all waiting for it to be The Rock to come back and challenge him, but now it's Cena. I was not necessarily expecting this to be the case, but this is the first time where it feels like the title really is in jeopardy for Cody.
Now, I'll finish off the Cena Cody conversation with this. Do you think he does it as of right now? Because things can change. The build can make you feel different ways. But as you sit here right now, we're very early in the build for this match. Do you think John Cena wins 17 as a heel, and that's how they end WrestleMania 41 in Vegas?
Yes. This is not what I would have done. I said I would continue to have him chasing basically the entire year and then win it at the end. Like, I thought Rumble perfect, second place. I thought Elimination Chamber, I would have had him be the last guy eliminated. Money in the Bank, he's touching the briefcase, gets tipped over. Somebody else climbs and wins it. Like, every step of the way, he would always be second until right in the very end, he ends up winning the 17th. But from storyline perspective, yeah, like, because I just keep thinking, like, if he loses, like, I can't, unless, yeah, I don't know. Because, like, to me, if you were doing this later on, then that's where that turn could have happened, where like the Rock lashes out at him for not getting the job done, and that's how, you know, we get that or whatever. But like right now, I'm just thinking if he loses, where do you go from there?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you would do in that instance. I look at this and I'm like, Cody Rhodes has been on a very, very solid run. Like you mentioned, the reign has felt like filler. I think it's been good filler. I think that you look at what he's done since he got, like,
everything's been great. It's just I never felt like he was going to lose the championship.
Yes. Yeah. And it felt like after the build to WrestleMania 40, he shouldn't be dropping the championship any earlier than the next WrestleMania. Like, you have to at least follow it up with him going into Mania as the champion. As far as coming out of Mania, I still feel like they're going to give it to Cody. I don't know why. It's just in the back of my mind. I'm like, that's not where this ends. Like, as you mentioned, it feels like Cena's story can't be that truncated to 17. It can't just be, well, he got mad that he lost at Rumble. He turned at Elimination Chamber. He won at Mania. I feel like there is going to be a little bit more to this, especially.
What if the only thing that I'll say here in this, like, I don't know how you get to like Cena being back in the title picture, but if you wanted to do something with Randy, what if it's Randy that joins next within that group with Cena and them, and he's Cody's next challenger after WrestleMania? Like, he comes out, acts like he's celebrating with him or whatever, hits him with an RKO. That's Cody's feud after Backlash in Mexico City, I think is where they're doing it or whatever. What if that's where that goes? I don't know how you get Cena back into the title picture eventually to win 17, or what you do with him if he loses at WrestleMania, but I don't know. I'm curious to see where if you're right and Cody does win this match, I think that's much more intriguing to me as we sit here right now, just because I'd want to know what the next step is.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to figure out if Cena wins and Cody loses where they go.
Yeah. I think the one thing that we've learned on this build to WrestleMania is if you have a preconceived notion of how this is going to go, throw it out the window. Because it's not. Like, Triple H has a lot of aces up his sleeve, and he's ready to take all of those aces to the craps table and to the craps table, to the blackjack table at WrestleMania, and just lay it all out there. So I'm excited to see what happens. Obviously, what we saw on Saturday changed the game for the build to WrestleMania 41. But one thing that has been kind of already in motion is the women's division for WrestleMania 41, because we both talked about it a little bit before the show. It looks like this could be one of the most stacked cards ever at WrestleMania for the women's division. It's never been better. The NXT roster is stacked, and I'm sure Stand and Deliver is going to offer plenty of great matchups, but the main roster is phenomenal as well, and the WWE has a perfect chance to highlight that talent in Vegas. You look at the two matches that we sort of have confirmed as of right now, and it is Tiffany Stratton versus Charlotte Flair for the WWE Women's Championship. That one is probably set in stone. And now you have Io Sky versus Bianca Belair. But I feel like Rhea Ripley's not going to just go gently into that good night. So those two as your title matches lead a wave of tremendous feuds that we could see over the next month and some change. I throw in Alexa Bliss versus Liv Morgan, because Liv eliminated Alexa in both the Rumble and Elimination Chamber. And if you caught the way that Alexa looked back at Liv, you were like, oh, okay, there's more to this story. I don't know how. And now that Liv is the tag champion, she can go over to SmackDown as well. And then obviously, you mentioned it earlier, Jade Cargill versus Naomi. I think that would be worthy of a WrestleMania spotlight. So the women's division right now is absolutely stacked. But let me start with what we saw most recently. Io Sky strips the belt from Rhea Ripley. Biggest surprise, I think, that we have seen, well, since Jey Uso won the Royal Rumble about a month ago. Like I said, if you have preconceived notions of how this is going to go, throw them out the window. How surprised were you whenever Io Sky hit the over the moonsault? It's the 1-2-3, and Rhea Ripley loses a one-on-one matchup against somebody other than Liv Morgan for the first time since 2021.
And she loses it to somebody that has her number. She cannot beat. Like, very, like, the way that they were talking that up, I thought that was like, if you already didn't feel like it was a given that Rhea Ripley's going to win that match, I thought they were telegraphing it on social media by talking about how Rhea has not beaten Io. That to me was like, okay. But what I figured was going to happen was, you mentioned Liv Morgan being the way that, you know, she lost in the chamber and just like the heel tendencies and stuff. I thought we were going to get shenanigans in that main event, and that's how Io gets added for a triple threat match at WrestleMania, is because like Io just kept getting screwed along the way in these chances. The Elimination Chamber qualifier, Rhea accidentally gets her disqualified, and then this. So I thought we would get a triple threat match. Rhea not being in the picture currently, don't think it stays that way. I just think the question is, how does she get into the picture? Does Io do her the solid by adding her? Like, I mean, but it's not the same situation. Like, I have no clue what Rhea does to get inserted into this picture, or maybe she doesn't, and we're just like assuming that it's going to happen. But Io versus Bianca is certainly not the route that I thought we were going to go here, unlike on the other side, where it's Tiffany and Charlotte, where that's been like telegraphed forever. And the one thing that I want to say about that, a gripe that I have, and I talked about this on my channel, is I think we got to stop with the Royal Rumble winners immediately telling what title they're going after before Elimination Chamber, because I think that also, not just from a perspective of like, I want that build up to continue. I think it like knocks out, in most cases, I'm not going to say for sure, like especially in the women's this year, knocks out like half the field for the possible winners. So that's just a little gripe that I have there. In terms of the matches, I think they're going to be fantastic. Does Rhea get added to this? Like, I think that she does, but if she doesn't, where does she go? Like, I feel like she has to.
I don't see anywhere for her to go, because who else has she been feuding with? I mean, nobody but Liv Morgan, and we don't want to see Liv Morgan versus Rhea for nothing, with no stakes other than the fact.
I will say, I picked Bianca to win the chamber, but if it would have been Liv, I think palatable if Io gets added and it's a triple threat.
Yes,
at WrestleMania, you could have done Liv versus Rhea another one-on-one, but
no. But if you're looking at Rhea, I don't think she has anywhere else to go. Now the question is, as you mentioned, how does this happen? She could do the old, well, I'm a champion, I deserve a rematch, and I want it by being inserted, but they also haven't held true to champions rematches at all in WWE under the Triple H era. But the other one that you could look at is, you could have said that there should have been a disqualification on Monday. It would have been a weak disqualification, but Bianca did shove Rhea Ripley, and she could say that should have been called. I should have the title, and I should still be going to Mania. Again, maybe this is too simplistic. Maybe there is a larger story at hand, but I think, like you mentioned, by hook or by crook, Rhea Ripley needs to be in that match, unless, of course, she's injured and not ready to go. But nothing from Monday indicates to me that she is injured and not going to be able to go in a month and a half. So I feel like she gets added, and I feel like I might be thinking too simply with the fact that she can just say, hey, it should have been a disqualification, and I should be the champion still anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the path is. I just think that's the end. Like, I feel like I know what the end game is without knowing the journey to get to it. I think that it is Rhea Ripley being added. I want to mention one more match that I would throw out there for women. Bayley and Roxanne Perez, I think, is going to deserve to be on the WrestleMania card when it's all said and done. I hope that they are still continuing to build that. I would actually imagine a world where Roxanne Perez works Stand and Deliver and also WrestleMania 41. Like, that is what I want to see. The way that they've been pushing her, they've strapped a rocket to her, was the Iron Woman in this year's Royal Rumble, obviously was in the Elimination Chamber, despite also being an NXT superstar. I love it. I think this is the type of talent that we need to be pushing. Obviously, we saw the way that Tiffany Stratton just like blew up last year. Roxanne Perez could absolutely be this year's version of that. So I would go that direction. One name that I wanted to throw your way that we haven't seen, and maybe we won't see before WrestleMania, certainly seems that it's going that direction, is Becky Lynch. Like, I don't know that we're going to get her before WrestleMania. If not, maybe she's a, Raw after Mania return or something like that. One thing that I would have loved to have seen her come back and do, though, would be to elevate that Women's Intercontinental Championship with Lyra Valkyria, who beat Becky Lynch for the NXT Women's Championship. I thought this would have been a great way to kind of reignite that feud. Also, both Irish, very good friends outside of the ring. So I thought if you're looking for a way to just like put a stamp on that division, which in my opinion certainly needs it right now, if I'm looking at just like the landscape of the WWE, that's somewhere where they could certainly use a little bit of juice. Have Becky come back and immediately be part of the mid-card division for the women on Raw.
It's funny. The two last things you mentioned are actually where I thought I was going to go, but put them together. I don't know if we're going to see Becky. I don't. And I think WWE right now is in a position where they have enough women's talent that they don't need to have Becky come back right before WrestleMania to join the WrestleMania card. I think the people that have been on the roster and doing the work over this past year deserve to get that spotlight. And I think Becky is somebody who would understand that as well. And if she comes back Raw after Mania, it's going to deserve and kind of regard one of the biggest pops that we have seen since, I don't know, you were in the building, probably Alexa Bliss at the Royal Rumble. But
yeah, that was like a Triple H coming back in 2002 type pop.
I was going to ask you, I was like, that had to be the loudest pop of the night, right?
Yeah. And I'll say like, no, it was on my radar. Maybe she could come back, but if you had told me she's coming back, I wouldn't have expected that. Like, I thought she did a good reaction, but like that has to feel great for her being gone for like 2 years. Her last match was at the Rumble in 23 against Bianca. To get that type of reaction, that's crazy.
Now, back to what I was saying there. Who beat Lyra Valkyria for the NXT championship? Roxanne Perez when she first won it. So maybe I think Bayley versus Roxanne, we've seen a lot of that already. I feel like if you're going to do that on the main card, which what we've seen with Roxanne, I agree with you. I put out a video saying that she is, to this point, the MVP of 2025. No matter what division you're talking, men's, women's, she is the MVP of 2025 so far because she has nailed everything she's been given and she's been pulling double duty. But if you're going to pull her up and let her work both Stand and Deliver and WrestleMania, why not an Intercontinental title match between her, Bayley, and Lyra Valkyria? Because I think Lyra, for what we're seeing right now, she is just picking up contenders and putting them back down. Dakota Kai last week. This week, it's Ivy Nile. So for her Mania match, and those titles should be on Mania, because if you're trying to establish them, they should at the very least be on Mania, the Intercontinental one especially. But if you're going to do a triple threat between Roxanne, Bayley, and Lyra Valkyria, I think that is 100% a match that I would have interest in. And I think that's a match that could stand the test alongside Stratton, Flair, EO, and Bianca and Rhea, as this is a WrestleMania worthy matchup.
What would you do with the U.S. women's title? Because I don't know that that's going to be on Mania. They treat the Smackdown now basically like it's part of it, right? They at least try to sell it that way. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, we could see like the tag titles maybe defended on there as opposed to Mania. Because again, it's going to be hard for them to get like 18 matches, which you could feasibly get. I'm going to be putting out the video this week, so go watch that. But what would you do? Chelsea Green has done great work with that title, despite not having many challengers for it. It seems like it's her and Michin. Zelina Vega kind of trying to insert herself into that picture right now. That if that were going to be on the WrestleMania card, that's what I would do. You just mentioned a triple threat for the Intercontinental. I got Chelsea Green versus Michin versus Zelina Vega. And maybe a cool way to twist it would also be like if we get like a Piper Niven turn beforehand, maybe insert her. But what would you do with that title going into Mania?
Yeah, that I'm not sure about, especially because you look at Chelsea Green, who just took a pinfall last night on NXT to Sol Ruca. So I don't know what to do with that one. It feels like they're pushing the Intercontinental more than they're pushing the United States, at least in ring, because Chelsea's work is, as you mentioned, Chelsea's work with that title,
she's awesome,
has been phenomenal. From the ring gear to her yelling at Nick Aldis for sending a ref down last week. It's just like her work has been very good. But I don't know if there is a rivalry to be had that puts them on the card. And it stinks to say because she deserves to be there, but I just don't see a rivalry right now. And again, maybe we got 6 weeks here. Maybe something heats up and you can see that being put on the card. But like you mentioned, as of right now, there's like 18, 19 matches that you could feasibly make where everybody is utilized and everybody is in a match that is worthy of being at Allegiant Stadium that weekend. It's hard to figure out which ones are going to make the cut and which ones are going to be, I don't want to say relegated, but technically relegated to the SmackDown before or the Raw after Mania.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it was like a certain point where we were at like early on, actually, even before Chelsea won the title, like the rivalry that her and Michin had with each other, it was awesome. Like that, the dumpster match that they had was awesome. If it still felt that way, but like after we've seen it, they faced each other like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Like do we really need to see it again at WrestleMania? That's why I think you got to have something else added to it. I put Selena Vega in there. Maybe we start to see like more animosity with Piper Niven and Chelsea. I don't know. But yeah, that to me feels like it would be the SmackDown before Mania, if anything.
All right, now let's close out this episode with a really quick question here about the other storylines of intrigue. Because, Zach, we've talked Cena, we've talked the entire women's division, which knocks out half of our conversation. But outside of what we've discussed, what feuds or potential matchups are you most excited about as we now accelerate on the road to WrestleMania 41?
Randy Orton came back on Saturday. Him and Kevin Owens, while it's not been announced, that's going to be the WrestleMania path for those two. I know a lot of people were hoping that Sammy and Kevin would happen at Mania as opposed to at Elimination Chamber, but that was kind of their Mania taking place in Canada. Like, I feel like they would rather have done it there, to be quite honest with you. So Randy and Kevin, they're going to tell a great story along the way there. Another one that I'll throw to, and it's not like they're going against each other right now. It's not super deep, but it's kind of the direction that I'm expecting them to go. I really want to see Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa, a one-on-one match at WrestleMania after we get a turn. The first time that Jacob says, "I hate you, Solo," as opposed to "I love you, Solo," might be an even bigger pop than Alexa Bliss at the 2025 Royal Rumble, if that's possible. So I love, dude. He's an electric factory, Jacob Fatu. There's nothing that he can't do. Just, he has such an interesting style on the mic. Like, I don't think that anybody's going to be like, this guy is the most, he gives the best promos, but just in terms of like the passion that he speaks with, the realism that he speaks with, it's like very relatable for a large portion of people. Like, that is, to me, what makes him so great in every aspect. Because he is good on the mic, despite a lot of people probably thinking that he's not. So I'm curious to see what direction they go with that as well. One thing that I don't necessarily want to see, we mentioned Logan Paul earlier. AJ Styles is going to call him out this upcoming Monday night, I guess. I guess that's potentially that where they're both going for Mania. But again, I'm not super interested in that, especially because AJ's got, if he's retiring before he's 50, turns 50 after 20, like he would turn 50 before the Mania in 27, which would mean next year's his last one. So his second to last Mania is going to be spent facing Logan Paul, and he's got one more after it. I'm not interested in it.
Stick with me on this one, because that's what I'm most excited for. Not Logan Paul versus AJ Styles one-on-one. That's not a match I want to see. But Bron Breakker is a star, man. This is his first Mania. You need to do something special for Bron Breakker's first Mania. They teased Bron Breakker versus AJ Styles. They haven't really resolved that. They then teased Bron Breakker versus Finn Balor. They haven't really resolved that. And both of those in and of itself would be great one-on-one WrestleMania matches. But now with Styles going after Logan Paul, not on any episode of Raw, but Raw at MSG to help bring Logan Paul into this fold, is this really about to be a fatal four-way for the Intercontinental title?
Well, what's funny,
Finn Balor and Styles being able to work together with Bron Breakker is something that I love. And if you want to throw Logan Paul in there, I guess that's a chess piece that I'm fine with him being in that match.
I have Bron Breakker in a fatal four-way for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania. None of the three names you mentioned are in that fatal four-way, but I actually like your idea. I got Finn Balor and Dom Mysterio on my card.
Ooh, that's a good one.
In the fatal four-way is Bron Breakker versus Sheamus versus Ludwig Kaiser versus Penta.
See,
now with Rosa Wrench and the Penta thing, is Rey Fenix is going to be here before Mania.
Do you think they debut him right before Mania?
I guess you could keep him. He's going to be signed. Like, he's going to be signed before Mania. I guess you don't have to bring him actually into the fold beforehand. And I don't know what you do from a tag team perspective, because unless, like, New Day takes out Rey so bad where he can't compete, and they're the ones that go after New Day to, like, out of revenge. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. They don't have to use Rey Fenix beforehand. Penta could be part of that.
Yeah, the Penta is the one that I look at and I'm like, man, I don't know what to do with him, because right now he's feuding with Ludwig Kaiser. And honestly, I agree with you that Ludwig does deserve to have a spot on Mania. He has done some of the best work out of anybody that we have seen since the calendar flip to 2025. I mean, his in-ring work is much better. His work on the mic, I think, stands against basically anybody.
He's like a James Bond villain, like, from a look perspective. And yeah,
everybody wants to know who the next James Bond is. I know who the next villain is, and his name is Ludwig Kaiser, because he demands your gratitude, and he has been great. So that's the one thing that like you mentioned, there's so many good characters right now that could go after that internet continental title. But the fact that they teased Breaker versus Styles, and I thought, okay, that's where they're going, and never resolved it, and now they're leaving it. They teased Breaker versus Balor, and right now that's where they're kind of in the middle of. And now Styles was talking about who? He was talking about Braun Breaker when Logan Paul interrupted him. So I'm like, if that's the fatal four-way, I have a hard time believing there's going to be any match on WrestleMania weekend that I'm going to enjoy more than Styles, Balor, and Breaker, and then I guess whatever Logan Paul OMG moment he's going to have.
Yeah, that can certainly steal the show. Like, regardless of which night it's on, we could look back on that one very fondly. What I feel like is possible, not necessarily advocating for this, is like those end up getting blown off on like Raws leading up to. Like, he faces, like you're saying, AJ Styles is calling out Logan Paul. What's going on with Finn Balor and Braun next week? Like, could they have their match at MSG and then, I don't know, the following week AJ Styles? Like, I don't know. We'll see. I actually like your idea, maybe more than mine. I just wonder how you get those guys on the card then, if that's not the path. Like, how do you get Dom Mysterio on WrestleMania if it's not versus Finn Balor? How do you get Penta on there without this match?
I mean, it's recyclable, but Dom Mysterio could turn on Finn Balor at Mania. I don't know if I want to see that. I don't know if that's how I want to book it, because I would like to see Dom actually in action, and it would be, the third year in a row that he was in action at WrestleMania. So it's hard. And I don't envy Triple H, because he has... It's kind of like what we talk about with, talks, past tense, with Mike Sullivan during the Penguins Cup runs. It's like, it's a bummer. You have two great goaltenders, but it's a great problem to have. Triple H has so many options at his hands and at his disposal for WrestleMania, especially for that Intercontinental title picture. I mean, the US one's a little murkier because Shinsuke as the champion going into Mania feels a little weird, especially if he hasn't wrestled.
I don't even have him on the card.
Yeah. And LA
I have the title on the card, actually, but I don't have him.
Never mind. I think I know where you're going with that one. But listen, Zach has a full video that breaks down everything coming out. So don't give us everything. Go over to Zachary Smith on YouTube. You can also find him at Zachary Smith PGH. Sorry, on YouTube and Twitter, where he has plenty more of these takes. Also, if you like Pittsburgh sports, he has plenty of those takes as well. But Zach, thank you so much for joining. I know we ran a little over, but you know what? You get to talking about WrestleMania and John Cena heel turns, and you just lose track of time.
I'm always good for that. Anytime somebody has me on, the last thing that they'll say is we went a little bit over. I'm quite the yapper. So, but no, I appreciate it, getting away from Pittsburgh sports for a little bit to talk about another passion of mine. It was a lot of fun. So thank you.
Well, like I mentioned, you can find him on Twitter and on YouTube at Zachary Smith PGH. If you like this video, remember to like, share, subscribe at Nick Belsky on YouTube, or you can find us at Bell to Bell on Spotify. We'll see you guys next time.